What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of tickers out there. I'm going to break down some big news that just came out involving Apple and the overall market that's looking very, very good for the bulls so far. And I'm going to break down why it's very likely the bulls are going to see more and more upside in the future for the markets. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things real quick. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks plus a $50 cash reward, and the offer ends in just 2 days. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. How on earth are things looking? So, just as a reminder, we had the JOLTS job openings coming out in the morning. This came out 30 minutes after the market opened today. And as soon as this came out, the market ended up pumping like crazy because the JOLTS job openings were down quite a bit compared to what the forecast was. We wanted 9.5 million. That's what we were expecting. Instead, the job openings were only 8.8 million instead, showing some signs that the labor market is cooling off. And this is just what the Fed wants, to be less hawkish. So far, there's a softening in the labor market that's becoming more evident. And this is exactly what the Fed wants, showing signs of the economy slowing down to slow down inflation and etc. Now, I'm just saying this from the Fed's perspective and the market's perspective. The labor market in itself is not the only factor that dictates inflation. You'll also have to look at like supply chains and etc. But for now, right, this is just one piece of data the Fed has been looking at, and that's the reason why I'm focused on this. Now, for tomorrow, we have some more data coming out. We have some GDP numbers coming out 1 hour before the market opens. And however this looks like, it's going to dictate how the market ends up like moving by the time we open. We could either gap up or gap down looking at this. And then after that, we have just a couple of other things like the PCE expectations and just a few others. We also have the pending home sales data coming out as well 30 minutes after the market opens. Nothing too crazy. It's not like as significant as the data from today or the data for like Thursday. But don't forget that for Thursday, we have the PCE data coming out. This is one of the most important inflationary expectations and measures of the Fed. And finally, for Friday, we have what's known as all of the unemployment numbers, the unemployment rate, and etc. So all of this is going to affect the markets. But for now, we're just going to focus on Wednesday. We have some data coming out in the morning, 1 hour before the market opens, and we'll see what the GDP numbers look like for that time frame. But besides that, for earnings, nothing too big is going to be coming out. I think we have HP coming out right now. For tomorrow, we just have a few others like Salesforce and just a few others. And then moving forward, we have like Dollar Tree for Thursday, and then nothing really else until like Dell's earnings comes out, and nothing too big for earnings for the week. But here's the big thing that helped the market push even more. Apple has announced a big event coming out for September 12th. This is going to be massive because we're expecting, or at least the market is expecting, for Apple to announce the new iPhone 15. Now, what typically happens during events like this is Apple tends to pump approaching the big event. It's kind of like a buy the rumor, sell the news event. And then during the big events, we tend to see Apple sell off. That's what historically happens the large majority of the time. So there's a high probability of that happening again. If that's the case, as Apple is starting to pump now, and Apple has some gaps above to fill, Apple could help the market pump for quite a bit of time. It could help the market hold up for some time before we see maybe another rug pull after this event. And even if Apple does help the market hold up, there could still be more like fluctuations amidst like the PCE reports coming out and other pieces of data. But overall, the trend should still favor the bulls a bit more, in my opinion. And here's exactly why. So I'm not going to use TradingView today. I just want to focus on Webull because I have very simple charts, and that's all you really need in a market like this. So let's talk about Apple first, because this is the big dog affecting the whole market. Apple, if anything, looks very bullish in my opinion. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure, and this is looking like a cup and handle simultaneously. And then when you zoom out of the chart, look at the daily charts on Apple, you will notice that when the MACD crosses to the bullish side, when the PPO gets a bullish crossover and bullish momentum builds, we tend to see Apple pump quite a bit. Look at the very early points of this year where Apple was in the 147 area. We got the bullish cross. It went all the way up to about 166, right? Another time right here, we got a bullish cross on the daily. Apple went from 163 all the way up to about, it reached a peak of about 176 over the next like a couple of weeks. Then we got a bullish cross right here. Apple went from 176 all the way up to about, it reached a peak at this time to about 194. It even hit 197 at one point before coming down. The bearish cross came, it came down really hard during the big drops that were going on in the markets. And then after that, forming the cup and handle like formation. It got a bullish cross again. And then it's not just a very flat bullish cross. This is looking like it has a lot more bullish momentum. And we didn't officially get this until like yesterday, and I was talking about this as well. And now we're really seeing the momentum continue. We got that confirmation of the break. It looks bullish in my opinion. So how do I see this playing out? Well, the GDP numbers come out 1 hour before the market opens, right? They could cause the market to gap down or something. We do need to cool off on the RSI a little bit on some tickers on the smaller time frames, right? But what I'm thinking is Apple might retest like uh, 182.5 to 183. It could drop just a tiny bit, then get another bounce and start pushing again. And ultimately, I think Apple's going to keep pushing and help the market hold up. Now, moving forward for the next week and a half to 2 weeks, we have this unfilled gap all the way up to 190. I predict Apple's going to fill this gap now, approaching the event. I think it's going to push into the 190s. I think Apple's going to help the market pump more. This also looks very similar to SPY. If you look at SPY, we have a nice cup and handle like formation, but on the daily chart, we have this unfilled gap all the way up at about 456. I think we're going to fill this gap on SPY relatively soon. We also got a bullish cross on the daily MACD, the PPO. It looks more bullish than bearish in my opinion. So what could happen tomorrow is we might gap down. So we may cool off and retest 448 and get a bounce somewhere around these high 440s, then start pushing even higher to try to get to about 451. I think the odds greatly favor that, and we're looking like we have a big trend change. What's the confirmation of the trend change? Well, you also have to remember that our low was at 433. Then the next low was 435 when Jerome Powell was giving his speech. And since then, the market just continued to pump. We haven't really tanked that much. So it just shows that the bulls are in control. The bulls have the edge, and they're going to be pumping this more, in my honest opinion. We could gap down, cool off a little bit in the morning just to cool off on the RSI on the smaller time frames, retest 448 or so, maybe a little lower, then bounce, start pushing for 451 plus. And eventually, for the next few weeks, I think we could be filling this gap into like the 456 area and make our way into the high 450s. I think the odds greatly favor that. Now, for what else is going on, we want to look at Tesla. Tesla's also looking very strong. We have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. It's forming this V-shaped recovery phase, and it's continuing to look strong, a very strong looking daily candle. Now, could Tesla cool off a little bit in the morning to cool off the RSI? Could this thing gap down a little bit? Sure. We could retest, like, for instance, 255 to 253, maybe even 250. I could see a slight little pullback before this thing bounces and tries going higher. And I think it's very soon going to push its way up to 260 plus and eventually hit 268 as the days go on. We're waiting for this break. You can see Tesla was very tight for the last few days. We finally got a big break. I also warned you guys about how if Tesla broke 245, this thing could push even higher. It didn't happen yesterday. It got a rejection off that level, but finally we got the breakout and the daily candle looks bullish. So it may cool off a little bit, maybe gap down, or it could just like cool off in the morning, depending on the GDP numbers, but then it should continue going higher as time goes on because of Apple, the whole market, and other factors like that. As of right now, the bulls have a lot of control. The technicals look more bullish, and it does look like it's going to start pumping even more. Looking at something else such as the QQQ, it looks bullish in my opinion simultaneously. If you look at this chart, it looks like it has a slanted inverse head and shoulders. Also had a bullish cross on the PPO today. This is the first time it happened. This is a good sign for it. It made a higher high right here compared to this one, a higher low, and then another higher high. Then we also have this unfilled gap all the way up to about 382. I think the QQQ is getting ready. Could gap down tomorrow, maybe cool off a little bit, retest 370 to 372 or so, and then start pushing for the 380s. I think it's going to happen over the next few weeks. For tomorrow specifically, it may cool off a little bit, retest 373 or so, then start breaking for at least 376. I think the odds greatly favor that, and it's looking quite good. Nvidia's daily candle looks pretty good. We have this bullish cross in the PPO that is still evident, right? It hasn't actually crossed downwards because Nvidia hasn't truly broken down in a way. If anything, what I would say is on the larger time frames, we have a change in market structure, right? This thing was making this low, another low, and now it's trying to make this new high right here. It has a nice inverse head and shoulders pattern that is developed. It's going to cool off to retest 482 or so. I could see that. It could drop a little bit. 475 to 482 could be retested. Then it could bounce off this and start pushing and make its way back up to this imbalance. And I think eventually it's going to hit $500 over the next couple of days. The chart looks more bullish. It does look like it may cool off a little bit just to start off tomorrow. Either it gaps down or it cools off, but eventually 500 is on the table. For Microsoft, this is looking more bullish as well. We have these imbalances all the way up here. You can see this imbalance to about 332. It may cool off to retest 326.9 and then bounce off that and start pushing. But I do believe ultimately it's going to fill this imbalance and hit 332 over the next couple of days, maybe for the next week. AMD also looks bullish. We were talking about this bounce just yesterday. If you look at it, we have this imbalance all the way up here at 110. It could come down to retest 104, then bounce off that and get attracted to this imbalance. The algorithm is going to start pushing it. This also looks like a giant inverse head and shoulders. It's a very, very wide, but you could see it right here. We have like a head right here at 99, a left shoulder and a right shoulder. I think this thing could start pushing above 110 very, very soon. For Netflix, it looks more bullish, right? Same thing, nice accumulation phase. Could be forming a cup and handle, so I'm going to be looking for a retest of 426 and a bounce. I think it's going to push all the way up to at least 434 plus. Could even see 437 again. Pretty good so far. The Nasdaq is once again getting a nice breakout. It is about to get a bearish cross in the PPO on the 30 minutes time frame, but on the daily chart, it looks bullish. It still looks bullish. We just barely got this bullish cross. So just like SPY and etc., it may come down, retest this previous high at like the 38,850 zone around there, then bounce off that and start pushing to start filling these gaps as the days continue, the weeks continue. So watch for a little drop and a pop, but it looks more bullish overall. Same thing with SPX. It's no different. We have this big unfilled gap all the way up to 45.76 or 45.75 around there. It may cool off just a little bit, retest 44 like 44.80 or so. It could come down a little bit, then try to bounce off that and start pushing to fill that gap over the next couple of trading days. And for tomorrow specifically, we could see it try to get above 4,500. But the VIX, I was calling this out earlier, guys. We have this head and shoulders like pattern, and it looks like the VIX has more downside potentially coming. If you look at the VIX, it's looking very weak right now. We have this head and shoulders, and it's coming down to fill this gap. It hasn't fully filled the gap yet. It might bounce tomorrow morning as the market maybe gaps down a little bit or cools off just a tiny bit, and then it may get a rejection off our 5 EMA at 15 and start dropping even lower to ultimately cool off to fill the gap as the market tries to push. The dollar got a bearish cross on the PPO that's getting stronger. The bearish momentum is building, and it's getting closer to 103. I think it could retest 103 if it continues dropping. Looking at Google, let's actually look at Coinbase first before Google. We were talking about a bounce on Coinbase, but that's because of new SEC regulations. Coinbase got a really nice bounce, hitting 84. Now we're going to be watching it potentially retest our 200 EMA, or maybe around there. 80 to 82 could be retested. Then we could bounce from there and start continuing to push. A nice accumulation phase is what formed, and we could be seeing this thing approaching this $90 area. For Alibaba, just for a couple of other people who are out there and interested in it, we have a nice accumulation structure as well. It's been respecting a nice uptrend. Could come down to retest this zone right here, this like 93.15 area. And even this previous high, if that breaks like around 92 and then continue going, we could see a 92 retest and this thing potentially pushing to fill this gap as the days go on to about 99. Overall, it looks more bullish. We could even see it break above 95 as soon as tomorrow. First, it may gap down and cool off first and then continue on the trend. Same thing with Google. Google is looking relatively strong right now. If you look at the trend, it's like continuing to respect higher levels and it's continuing to break out. If you look at the daily charts on Google, on the daily, Google's looking quite good. We have a nice accumulation structures respecting a nice uptrend. We're going to be watching this thing approach this 140 level very soon. Now, it could retest, okay, this high right here. It could retest this area right here, especially for tomorrow. We could see it retest like 134.5 or so, bounce off that and start pushing, and we could see it make its way up to about 138. If that breaks, 140 is on the table. It could happen sooner than expected. For Amzn, we got this really nice bounce off the 50 EMA. We're going to be watching this imbalance that formed basically right here. I think we also have this unfilled gap right here. Let me double check this. We technically have a gap here. This isn't technically filled. So we could see Amazon start pushing quite a bit as time goes on. But the problem with Amazon is we need to see it establish a new market structure. So we're going to be watching it come down a little bit, retest the 34 area, establish a higher low, basically, bounce off that and start pushing for 37 plus. And I do believe the odds are favoring that. So it may come down to like the 34 flat area, maybe a little bit lower, bounce off that and start pushing even more. Meta hit our target from yesterday at 298. We're going to be watching this thing retest this 20 EMA, maybe 295 or so. If it holds very nicely, we have this potential bullish cross on the PPO that could be forming. And it looks to me like it could come down just a little bit and start pushing even higher and try to make its way back up to 305 plus or even higher levels than that. So it's looking more bullish than bearish. It may cool off a little bit. It needs to establish a higher low. And then once we get this bullish cross on the PPO, that's going to give us another signal that this thing is getting ready to start pushing into the 300s. So the market looks more bullish for the time being. Be careful tomorrow morning because 1 hour before the market opens, we have the GDP numbers coming out. That could affect how the market opens, whether we gap up or gap down. And then we'll wait and see from there. But ultimately, even if the market either cools off or gaps down tomorrow, I think it's going to see another push. I do believe we're ultimately going to see the market pump thanks to Apple, and I do believe there's more upside on the table just looking at this chart. We were waiting for this confirmation. We finally got some nice confirmation of these levels breaking, so the odds do favor more potential upside, and the market is showing some strength. All right, guys, so I hope this video was as simple as possible and very clear to understand. I hope this benefited your day, and just know that the charts do look more bullish in my opinion overall. All right, thank you for listening. Please remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, market to the moon, and peace